A speck of light bursts across a dark space in a room and shines over a sphere that slowly transforms into an eye. During the transformation, a woman speaks inaudibly. She adjusts her speech until she's able to utter recognizable words. Somewhere in Glasgow, Scotland, a motorcyclist stops by the side of a road to pick up an unconscious young woman from a field and puts her into the back of a white van. Later, a female undresses the seemingly dead woman and wears her clothes. After dressing up, she stares at the woman as a tear flows from her eye. As she prepares to leave, the female sees an ant crawling on the woman's body, so she bends down and picks it up. She allows it to crawl on her fingers as she curiously observes the insect. Up in the sky, strange lights covered by thick clouds hover on top of a tall building, slowly moving away from each other. Meanwhile, the female leaves a dilapidated house as the motorcyclist unloads his bike from the van. After the motorcyclist takes off, the female goes to a mall to buy some clothes and accessories. Back in the van, the female puts her lipstick on, then drives through the streets of Glasgow, observing the people walking by. Not long, a man alone on the sidewalk catches her watchful eye, so she calls his attention by honking the horn. When the man approaches the van, she rolls down her window and asks him for directions to the M8 motorway. After the man gives her the directions, she asks the man if he's busy. The man tells the female he's going to meet someone, so she lets him go on his way. Later, she asks another man for directions to the post office. The female attempts to get acquainted with the man by asking him for some personal information. However, she becomes disinterested when the man tells her that he has a family. When the female spots another man on the highway, she tells him that she got lost looking for the M8. Before the man could give her the directions, she asks him if he's walking to be home with his family. When she learns that he is living by himself, she offers him a ride. When the man hops into the van, she asks him what he likes about being alone. The man tells her there's no one to nag him. The man doesn't seem to attract the female's interest, so she lets him out of the van and continues driving through the streets. After a while, the female comes across another man and starts conversing with him. When she hears his friend calling for him, she takes off immediately. Finally, the female manages to pick up a man that seems to amuse her. As they drive, the female asks the man if he has a girlfriend. After learning that the man is unattached, she starts flirting with him by complimenting his looks. The man responds by telling her that she looks gorgeous. When they arrive at the house, the man cheerfully follows the female, excited by the thought of sleeping with her. Inside, she starts taking off her clothes as she looks seductively at the man. The man strips off his clothes as well while he walks after her. As the man goes further, he starts sinking into the floor that appears to be made of liquid. When the man is submerged, she walks back and picks up her clothes. Later that night, the female goes on the prowl again, but she couldn't find anyone that pleases her eye. The following day, she goes to a beach and tries to pick up a swimmer by waiting by his towel. She asks the swimmer for a good spot to surf, but he tells the female that he's still not familiar with the place. He had set up a tent nearby, spending most of his time swimming and reading. The swimmer discloses that he's from the Czech Republic, and he went on a trip to Scotland because he wanted to go somewhere secluded. Their conversation is interrupted when they see a woman struggling to swim to the shore. The swimmer hesitates to save her, but when he sees another man running towards her, he runs over to help. The woman soon gets lost in the water, so the swimmer rescues the other man trying to save her. The female watches the rescue attempt, but she's utterly apathetic to their predicament. When they reach the shore, the man swims back into the sea to find the woman. The swimmer, exhausted from being battered by the waves, just lies on the shore and doesn't stop the man. The female walks toward the swimmer and hits him in the head with a rock. Later, she drags the body across the beach while ignoring a crying baby nearby. The female heads back to the dilapidated house with the unconscious swimmer on the passenger seat. Later that night, the motorcyclist folds up the tent that appears to belong to the swimmer while the baby cries alone near the shore. The motorcyclist picks a piece of clothing on the ground near the infant, but he completely ignores the wailing child. Soon, the female drives around the city again with the intent of picking up another man. A man in another car hollers at her during a stop at an intersection, but she couldn't understand him. The car drives away, but the female manages to catch up to the man as he walks toward a club. She tries to follow him, but she quickly turns around when she sees a large crowd. As the female walks away, she comes across a group of women who drag her with them into the bar. The confused female doesn't know what to do, so she joins them. The female, unsettled by the crowd and the loud music, couldn't stay long inside, so she finds her way out. When she walks into another door, she finds herself in an underground lounge area where she comes across the man who hollered at her earlier. The man offers to buy her a drink in the hopes that they could spend some time together. He is surprised when the female tells him that she saw him on the road earlier. After dancing for a while, the female takes him to the dark room at the house. The man dances in the dark, oblivious to the strange surroundings, as the female takes off her clothes. When the man removes his pants, the female starts walking backward, enticing him to follow her. Soon, he sinks into the dark liquid, but he still gazes at the female without any concern about his current predicament. As she walks off, the man starts to show signs of confusion as he observes the female from below. When the female leaves, he looks at his surroundings and sees another man in front of him. He reaches out to touch the other man's hand, but he suddenly drifts away. Soon, the other man's body appears to implode, leaving nothing but his skin. Afterward, the man's pulverized remains are funneled to a trough that leads to an opening on the wall. The following day, a man from another car buys her a rose while she's stuck in a traffic jam. When she looks at the rose, she notices some blood on the covering. The female is alarmed by the sight of blood on her hands, but she is somewhat relieved when she sees that it came from the wound on the flower peddler's hand. When the female listens to the radio, she hears a report stating that a man's body has been found washed up on the beach. His wife and 18-month-old child are still missing, but the police had to stop the search due to the thick fog in the area. As the female continues driving around the city, she starts observing other women walking on the streets. Soon, she meets another man and takes him for a ride. The man expresses his admiration for her, telling her that there's something about her eyes that captivates him. She smiles at him to feign interest, but she immediately turns her attention back to the road. When she takes him to the house, the man hesitantly follows her. Later on, the woman is approached by the motorcyclist in the dark as she applies lipstick. After examining the female, the motorcyclist stares deep into her eyes as if he's communicating with her telepathically. After the motorcyclist leaves, the female gets out of the house and walks on the streets alone. When she stumbles to the ground, she remains to lie face down, dumbfounded by the experience. The female finally gets up when a man helps her. As she continues walking around the city, she observes the people around her. When the female drives around the city in her van again, a group of rowdy men approaches her and bangs on the vehicle while she's parked. Instead of panicking, she calmly drives away to find other men to take back to the house. The female soon spots a man walking alone, so he asks him for direction to Tainhild. When she learns that he's headed to the supermarket along the way, she offers him a ride. When the man gets inside the van, he takes off his hood, revealing his disfigured face. She asks him why he shops at night, so the disfigured man tells him that people bother him during the day because they're ignorant. As she asks him more questions, she learns that the man has never had a girlfriend. Soon, the female stops at a corner, asking him if he wants to look at her. She tells him that she liked the feeling when she noticed him staring at her. The disfigured man starts to feel uncomfortable, but he denies it when the female points it out. He insists that he just wants to go to the supermarket. When the female asks him if he ever thinks about being with a girl, the man doesn't respond. She takes his hand and lets him touch her face. When she learns that he liked it, she lets him touch her neck. After a while, the female tells the man that she has a place nearby and invites him to come with her. Inside the dilapidated house, they come across a strange figure walking in the dark. She tells the disfigured man that he won't let the strange figure stop them. When the man looks back at the figure, she tells him to pay attention to her as she walks backward and undresses. As they walk in the dark, the man tells himself that he's dreaming. The female, now fully naked, concurs as she walks backward. She continues walking as the disfigured man sinks to the floor. Later on, the female walks down the stairs and looks at herself closely in the mirror. Not long after, the female walks out of the house with the disfigured man. Still naked, the man walks across a field as the female watches him from her van. Meanwhile, the motorcyclist stops by a house and smashes a parked car's window. After opening the trunk, he walks to a garden and approaches the deformed man as he climbs through the fence. Afterward, he puts the deformed man on the trunk and drives away. While driving down the highway, the female comes across a thick fog, leaving the van and walking. She stops by near a beach and listens to someone singing close by. Meanwhile, the motorcyclist stares at himself in the mirror in the house as he tries to figure out where the female went. After a long walk, the female ends up in a restaurant, where she orders a slice of chocolate cake. She takes a small piece and slowly puts it in her mouth, only choking and spitting it out. While she's walking away from the restaurant, a man tells her that the bus will be arriving shortly, so she decides to wait at the bus stop. When she gets on the bus, the driver warns her that she might freeze because she's not dressed for the weather. Another man on the bus approaches her and asks her if she needs help. The driver tells him to leave her alone, but the female tells the man that she does need help. After getting off the bus, The female, now wearing the man's jacket, follows him to a grocery store. As the man shops for food, she wanders around the store, bewildered by the different items being sold. When they reach the man's house, he prepares them something to eat. She ignores the food and turns her attention to the TV, showing a man performing stand-up comedy. She watches the TV intently, trying to understand what's causing the audience to laugh. When the man plays music on the radio, she starts tapping her fingers on the kitchen table. That night, the man brings tea to her room and tells her goodnight. Instead of going to bed, the female looks at her naked body in the mirror, moving her legs and arms. Elsewhere, the motorcyclist meets up with 3 others, but they split in different directions to look for the female. The man and the woman take a walk in the woods and stop by an abandoned castle. The man notices that she appears to be cowering in the corner, so he asks her if she wants to leave. He leads her down the stairs and takes her home. That night, the female allows the man to kiss her. She closes her eyes and waits as if she's doing it for the very first time. When they get to bed, he strips off her clothes as the female lets him take control. However, the man struggles as he tries to penetrate her. When she suddenly feels something, she stops the man and grabs a lamp to look at her private parts. The confused man asks her if she's alright, but she just stares at the window through the curtains. In the morning, the female takes a walk in the woods on her own. Along the way, she comes across a logger who tells her to be careful because it's slippery around the forest due to the weather. The logger assures her that she won't get lost because the pathways are marked. Before going on his way, the logger tells the female to enjoy her walk. Meanwhile, the motorcyclist cruises along the highway in search of the female. Soon, the female comes across a cabin, so she decides to rest there for a while. She slides into a corner of the room and sleeps there. However, she is soon jolted awake when he feels someone aggressively stroking her legs. She runs towards the woods and hides on a massive rock for a while, but she soon emerges when she sees no one pursuing her. When she gets to the road, she comes across a logging truck and goes inside. She looks around and tries to start it, but the keys aren't on the ignition. When she sees the logger on the road, she honks the horn to alert other people. With no one coming to her rescue, she gets off the truck and runs back to the woods. The logger chases her and soon catches up to her. The logger pins her down and forcefully strips off her clothes. The female, terrified and confused, struggles as the logger continues to force himself on her. When the logger pulls off her bra, he realizes that he had ripped off her skin. When he looks at the female, he is startled to see her pitch black flesh underneath the torn skin. The logger runs away as the female tries to gather herself. The female feels her way around the woods, strolling and trying to hold herself together. She then decides to remove the torn skin, revealing her proper form. She kneels, looking at the human face as it blinks at her. Later on, the logger sneaks up on her and pours gasoline on her body. The female gets up and walks away as the logger lights up the fuel. As the flames reach her, she does not scream, but she runs out of the woods and collapses on the snow. Elsewhere, the motorcyclist stands on a hilltop, looking in all directions, still trying to find the female, who has been reduced to ashes as the snow slowly extinguishes the fire.